right, guys, we are coming again with another marketing strategy session. And today we're going to talk a little bit about how you can position your brand to where your actual customers and clients, they look at you as the clear choice. You can separate yourself from the competitors. And I have brought an expert in that. Mitch Duckler has actually helped companies such as Coca-Cola, Hyatt, ExxonMobil, Cox, and many others build their business to the brands that you know and love. He's also a best-selling author. He's written a book, The Indispensable Brand, which is interesting. He says he can take you from invisible to invaluable. And that is what we all want to be, is invaluable. And how many of us are right now raising your hand to say, I'm invisible? So Mitch, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jeff. Great to be with you.
Great. So we're going to get down and dirty into marketing and not the philosophies of what we've found in, with Totten College. We want to really talk about real world issues that businessmen and women and marketers of all ages, what they face when they're out there. They're trying to help establish a brand. They're trying to be notable. They're looking for all of these things, but they're looking at a lot of, I guess you would say, blogs and YouTube videos and theories that give this utopian pie in the sky, step-by-step, 1, 2, 3 in marketing, and falling short. So in your experiences, what would you say will be the one thing to make them, a brand? How to differentiate yourself from others in the market?
Well, I think it's important to separate strategy from execution. So you mentioned a lot of tactics right before, and those are all really important. I don't mean to diminish their importance, but when you talk about things like blogging and social media and video marketing and advertising in general, for that matter, those are all important, but those are tactics. And your tactics, as I think you can appreciate, are only as good as your strategy, the strategy that those are intended to support. So I like to say, and I talk to my clients, it all starts with your brand positioning strategy. And have you identified a meaningful point of difference, something that really sets you apart from the competition? And, very often, more often than not, I would say is the answer to that is no. I like to tell my clients, if we were to take your package, let's just say, for example, you are in a product category, and remove the name from it, but leave everything else intact, would they be able to recognize that package or that piece of collateral or whatever it may be as your brand? Leaving everything else and just removing your name. And I think very often the answer is no. And that's because brands have not achieved a meaningful point of difference. And There are a number of ways you can do this. And I do talk about it in the book, but conventional wisdom, like back in the marketing college classes that you talked about earlier, they would always say it has to be a benefit, right, Jeff? I mean, it's got to be an end benefit. But very often it is, right? But it doesn't have to be. And in fact, very often in many categories, the benefit is arguably universal, right? And, in transportation, an automobile, ultimately you get in a car to go from point A to point B, right? So if automobile manufacturers were to differentiate based on that end benefit, if we get you there from point A to point B, arguably there'd be no differentiation, right? So what do? A lot of them differentiate based on a how. The way they get you from point A to B. Mercedes is in luxury. Tesla, it's all about, it's a very different means, right? This is an electric car, an environmentally friendly, a sustainable solution. It's all in the how. Just like a Ferrari or a Volkswagen, it's going to get you from point A to point B, but in a very different way. So that's another way, right? Beyond a what or a benefit, it's a how. Very often hows are ingredients, right, or processes. But I like to tell clients, and I would tell your listeners, think about how you deliver a benefit, especially if that benefit is kind of an ante. Is that what makes you special? So that's the second. The third way I would propose is why. And Jeff, you're probably very familiar with purpose branding. It's been all the rage. Simon Sinek has a very famous TED Talk, Start with Why, right? And that's kind of what this is about. This is about a purpose or why your brand exists. Maybe there's something special behind your purpose that really can reflect the basis for a differentiation, for differentiation and for a brand promise. Importantly, this isn't about CSR, right? This is not about a corporate social responsibility campaign, and it's not even just mission. A lot of brands will have a mission statement, right? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about companies who define their brand by their mission, and that says something very different, right? Patagonia is a great example of a brand that is very why-based or very purpose-driven, right? And the last is who, right? These are lifestyle brands that are very much about a persona. If you think about Mountain Dew, like what comes to mind, right? That's a very active Gen X, Gen Y, male gamer, extreme sport enthusiast, right? And they are the ones who embrace this brand, and they almost define the brand beyond any other element.
Okay.
So start with your positioning.
Now that's great how you basically put that into that order, because most would say let's start with the last one first, start with the who first, and then move down. But you're saying, okay, look, you have the what, you have the how, you have the why, which I've taken that course. It's a great course. And then who does that really benefit? And once you understand that, now you're putting together a strategy in that way versus I have this particular widget and it does this. So we're just going to basically focus on the features, and we're the best at it, or we're the first to do it. Right.
Well, a very important distinction, I should clarify. All four of these, I think, I would argue, are important, right? And every brand has it, right? To your point, every brand has or should have a target audience, right? Most brands have a mission or a vision or a purpose, and most brands have a what, right? A benefit and proof points. How? What I'm talking about is, what is it? Which one of those four is it that makes you different, right? It's not that you don't need the other three, but which of these is your point of difference, and which of these do you really lean into most heavily in terms of how you deliver your experience and in terms of communicate and message. So no, thank you for clarifying. I'm not suggesting that the other three aren't important. They're all important, but identify what it is of those four that make you most different from everybody else.
Okay. So yeah, that really helps. That really helps. That makes you special. So you have all four, but you focus on the one that makes you special.
Your point of difference, exactly. Yep.
Right. So like when you're out there and you've identified that, now you're looking at, okay, I need to put together this marketing campaign. I need to put this strategy into motion. Let's say one of the four is my strong suit. I'm going with that. Developing that story. What will be the next move in developing that whole, I call it story, but it's really tied into strategy. But with that strategy, you want them to go onto a customer journey. And so you're developing this narrative, this story that they go down to. What's the next best practice that you would say, you've identified them now, but now you got to go out and figure out how to get in front of them and tell them what they want to hear.
Yeah. Well, you're referring to it as story. I would say, and I think story is one component, but I would broaden it and say experience. So what is the experience you want your customers to have? You talked about a journey, and I think that's a great description or a great analog. You are sending your customers or your potential customers on a journey, and it starts with pre-purchase, right? How do they become aware of you? How do you even enter their consideration set? How are they, how are you creating awareness for them and consideration? And then it can go into purchase, hopefully, and then even post-purchase where you have a relationship after. So
wait a minute, stop right there. Say that last part again, because that is so important that we miss. Post-purchase is still important. So Say that again, because that is so much, so many times that's missed.
Yeah, no, I agree. The relationship shouldn't end with the purchase, right? It should be a jumping off point, but it should also be a continuation, right? So think about all the ways that you can service a customer after the transaction that keeps them happy, keeps them loyal, maybe even makes them an advocate or a brand champion for you. And those are things like, your after service support and guarantees and warranties and follow up and customer satisfaction surveys, just touching them in any way you can to make sure that the relationship continues beyond when they've given you your money, so to speak. keep them a happy customer. Like I said, that keeps them loyal, but hopefully, ideally, it also builds raving fans, right? That tell others and refer you and sing your praises through word of mouth.
So it goes beyond the receipt.
Exactly. That shouldn't be the end, hopefully.
Cool.
Yeah, to finish, so exactly. Think about all of those: pre-purchase, purchase, and post-purchase. And then think about how that journey, put yourself in your customer's shoes. Better yet, do research and have your customers tell you what each of those touch points are like. And ideally, they should be very consistent with, if not inspired by, your brand positioning or what makes you different. And as you can imagine, if you walk into a dealership for Tesla or for Jaguar, it's going to be very different than Taurus for Ford, right? A Ford, when you buy a Ford or a Chrysler, let's say, you would expect very different touch points: pre-purchase, purchase, and post. Each of those should be reflective of the brands they represent. So evaluate every touch point along the customer journey within the context of that positioning and make sure it's on point. That's really the step once you have that meaningful point of difference.
Okay. Now, when you're putting together this strategy, are you assuming those points up front, or you're kind of going as you go along, and then you're saying, "Oh, this is a point"? I know if you do it up front, you're still modifying as you go. But is that something that you bake into the strategy beforehand, or is that something that as you go along, you're just saying, "Oh, well, I've identified this point now. Let's add it to the strategy"?
It can go either way, but typically what we do is once we have that positioning defined, we say, okay, let's kind of map out that journey, right? What is the experience from the very moment somebody becomes aware of your brand and all the ways they can become aware, all the way through purchase and beyond. And I try to identify them all as much as possible up front. That's not to say if you identify some after the fact, you can't and shouldn't incorporate them, you should. But do an inventory, and then you're going to have, if you're a typical brand and you have especially a complex sales cycle and journey map, you could have literally hundreds of touch points, right? We're talking about everything from the way, a receptionist answers the phone, to the copy on your website, to, your guarantee or your warranties or whatever. All of these different touch points matter, right? So you got to identify them, but then you need to prioritize them. Which ones are most important, right? And which ones probably have the biggest gap in terms of delivering on your promise or that point of difference. And that's really where you have your focus, right? It's that combination of the most important ones and the ones that need the most attention relative to your positioning. And you focus on those. That's typically how we instruct our clients to think about it. Okay.
Now, with the digital world being so fast paced, would you recommend like a marketing automation tool to do this, or is it just something that internally is just a part of your brand structure that you're saying, okay, this is how we think about it? I know with automation being all the rage, everybody's looking at some easy solution to do this. What would be your recommendations in regards to that?
I think it can be either way. I think that, marketing marketing automation is a tactic, if you will, albeit
Okay.
right.
I'm going back to tactics again, huh?
No, that's fine. But that's where we are in the conversation. But marketing automation is fine, I think, as long as, again, like everything else, it's designed in such a way that it can deliver the brand, deliver the experience on brand. So in other words, with marketing automation, every touch point, every email you receive, every interaction, whether it's automated or live from a human being, it's almost irregardless, right? It needs to be consistent with the brand. I think you might have a little more leeway to do that when you have human interaction, right? I think you just inherently have more opportunities to infuse brand and your brand personality and your brand interactions into those touch points. But, you can also do it through automation too. It's just paying attention to detail, making sure that messages, emails, whatever the communication that you're automating is consistent with your brand.
Okay. So, we're going to get into the good, bad, and the ugly. Okay. So let's talk about the good. In your experience, like, what has been the best experience in putting together a strategy like this? Do you have any war stories about, like, you don't have, names can be nameless, but do you have any, like, this was great, I mean, everything went according to plan?
One of the examples I like to talk about in some of the speaking I do, and was actually written up in my book, is the Peloton brand, if you're familiar with them, the spinning brand, exercise. So, they have a very solid positioning, which is it's kind of like, it's not about the bike, right? It's, the bike, the spin cycle is a metaphor for life, if you will. And it's about what they say, showing up. And I interviewed the vice president of marketing for Peloton, and she talked a lot about their positioning. It's showing up, right? You show up when you're on the bike and you give it your all. And when you do that, you tend to show up in other aspects of your life, right? Whether it's you're going through a tragic time, or you have a big presentation or a crisis at work. And the more prepared you are, like physically, the more prepared you are mentally to kind of show up and deal with challenges and deal with life's obstacles. And they really do a great job. When you think about all those different touch points of how you learn about Peloton and the website, to the way they deliver and install their bike, to their instructors and the classes that they have that can be either live or on demand. They have a gorgeous display and great audio system that's supported. It really creates this experience that's very consistent with that promise of kind of an exceptional exceptional experience, and it helps you show up. And I'm a big fan of theirs, and I think they're a great example of doing that, really identifying that unique point of difference and carrying it through every touch point.
So they definitely talked about the why. Then they talked about that purpose, that why.
They do. Exactly, and kind of a higher order benefit, right? You don't think about a spin bike as making you better or more effective in life, but in a way.
So if you show up and then you pass out, what does that say about you in life?
It means you need to take it a little slower and work a little harder, I think.
Oh, cool. So what about the bad? What's the worst? Like, just everything just seemed to be an obstacle experience when you were putting together a strategy.
A few come to mind. And here I won't call out individual brands, but I'll kind of lump an industry together. And for me, it's the airline industry. And I know they're an easy target, but I think everything about them. First of all, I think they struggle with what I talked about earlier around monotony. I think this notion of, I think if you were sitting on a plane and you didn't see the logo of that airline prominently displayed somewhere, would you? And you weren't thinking about who you booked with, you wouldn't know what airline you're on, right?
Yeah.
It's very very monotonous, right, and very undifferentiated. So it starts with the positioning. There's a couple of ones that stand out. I think Southwest is certainly a little bit different, and Virgin, with Richard Branson infused in. But other than that, you think about the big guys with United and American and Delta and so forth, and they're really all the same. So it starts with a lack of differentiation, and then I think if you carry it through all the different touch points that comprise the experience, it continues, right? Just everything is a hassle. Things just don't seem to be. There's no consistency in experience and in delivery. Whether you're making a reservation, showing up at the gate, boarding, and some things are certainly out of their control, but I think a lot of things aren't. And they don't do themselves, I think, a service in terms of delivering an exceptional experience and creating an indispensable brand.
You're right about that. I mean, actually, every time you go to the airport, it's kind of like a new experience. You're like, I hope it goes well. Based off of my last experience, hopefully everything is consistent. But you don't. You might get there and the whole process is totally different. The experience is totally different. So yeah.
Have you ever asked anybody how was your flight, and they say, "Oh, it's great. It's uneventful," and they mean that in a good way, right? But way it's not, right? It's like it should be eventful and eventful in a positive way, but there really is nothing pleasant about air travel, unfortunately, and you have to ask yourself why. Is that just inherent about travel or air travel, or is it that airlines haven't been able to differentiate and create an experience that's really pleasant and enjoyable? Where uneventful is the best thing you can say about it.
Except for those Instagrammers that show you, or YouTubers that show you these elaborate, where they're getting pampered. And that's good for the movies, but I haven't been on those flights just yet.
I haven't either. I have not either.
So the ugly, I will leave alone. The ugly usually is I'll answer the ugly. The ugly is the ones that we service anybody that has money. That's really the ugly. They're like, anybody that has money, that's who we go after, and we are the best. We are the cheapest, and that's what makes us worth you doing business with us. And it's like, wow, that does not work at all. And it makes it very hard to put together a strategy because you have no starting point.
Right. You don't know who you serve. You don't know what benefit or need you're trying to address. You don't know how you can do it in a highly distinguishable way. It just goes from bad to up to worse, right?
Yeah.
When you don't have that.
Yes, definitely. Well, Mitch, I appreciate you sharing your insight. The 25 plus years of experience and so many brands that you've helped. I really appreciate it. Hopefully everybody that listened and watched got something out of it. If they are looking to have strategy, they can reach you at fullsurge.com, correct? And also, before reaching out to Mitch, you can go to Amazon and purchase the book and get, learn a little bit, read a little bit while you're on a flight. Read a little bit. Exactly. You have nothing else to do. It's uneventful.
Right, it's uneventful. Right.
But yes, Mitch, thanks so much for sharing your insights with us. And, this is really just the tip of the iceberg, guys. This is not, really digging into the strategy. This is to get you to think in a good starting point way. And from there, I recommend leveraging people like Mitch and others that know how to set up a strategy with putting those particular principles into play versus just reading, like I say, a blog. Nothing against bloggers, but that's just one small nugget in the whole cake. That's just one little crumb. And if you're basing your entire marketing strategy off of one article, it's going to be a long day.
That's right.
So Mitch, thanks again, everybody. Thank you so much. The contact information will be in the show notes. This is a part of the marketing community that's being built for marketers and business owners to help grow their business. So this is one of many different ways that you can market your business. If you have any trouble, you have no excuse because you actually have people that you can reach out to, right, Mitch?
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So cool. Well, Everybody enjoy your day. I'll let you get back to work.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Oh, oops, I'm using the Mac. Sorry.